Hey everybody, Coach here. Hey, thanks for taking a couple of minutes to joining me this week. We're talking about soil amending and how it leads to your landscape success. You know, there's a lot of schools of thought on it. I'm sharing mine with you, and I'm sure you'll find some others that have different points of view. You know, some folks think it's a giant waste of time. They love the idea of planting in the native soil. Others have absolutely no idea what to do because it's not their wheelhouse, it's not their bailiwick just yet. They haven't learned enough. And then there's folks like me who've planted tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of plants over their career and personal use and know the benefits of soil amending. So anyway, that's what we're doing. We're going to dive in just a little bit deep. Again, I am glad you're here. Let's get started. You know, let me start off by saying this, as this episode is not about soil science, microbiology, or soil chemistry. I'm not diving that deep into it. What this is going to be is a segment on how to take those greenish thumb people and you brown thumb people and turn yourself into someone who has confidence and reliability on one's skills in order to take a $50 plant nowadays, put it in the ground, and be relatively 95% assured it's going to thrive and survive. But if you're interested in going into that science portion of it, jumping into that proverbial rabbit hole, so to speak, man, check out some of the other creators that are out there. There's some good ones that do a fairly understandable job of the science part of soils. Yeah, it's not going to be this guy. So let's talk about the why. Why would we go out and spend $500 on beautiful plants in their height of perfection from the retail nursery or wherever you got it, bring them home and not amend the soils and achieve success? The why behind it is just that. It's for you to achieve success. Nothing more, nothing less. What you're doing is you are amending the soil makeup to somewhat mimic the soil makeup that plant is accustomed to in the container. If you think about the soils of which a ornamental plant has been raised, if you take it out of the container, turn it upside down and look at it, you're going to see a combination of soils that probably has nothing to do with where it's going to go. And so what I'm going to encourage you to think about is achieving that transitional space. Remember those two words. Creating that transitional space from what the container has done for the plant to what you're going to do for its forever life in your yard, in your landscape. And oftentimes the two soils are not anything alike. You may have heavy red Georgia clay type soil. You may have a very porous sandy soil. Who knows what you have? But what we're going to try to achieve is to have some semblance and balance of some of where it's going to live forever and some of where it came from. You know, over the years I have purchased and I have sold tens upon tens of thousands of plants in my life. And with only the exception, I think the exception of balled and burlapped is the only field-grown stuff I really dealt with. They were mostly trees, Christmas trees, ornamental trees, dormant deciduous trees, etc. But you have to remember that soil chemists and soil science people, they create this soil that the professional ornamental plant that you bought, they created that soil specifically for that plant. In some cases, right down to the actual cultivar, because it requires a certain pH, both of food, soils, and water, to grow it fast, to grow it healthy, and to have it pop bloom when it's supposed to, so it can be shipped off to the nursery where you pick it up and go ooh and ah, and you fork out your dollars for it. Well, then you take it to your backyard, and your backyard soils are really, you know, they're different. They're different from what the plant is. And what this soil amending is going to do is it's going to reduce the transitional planting shock that the plant is going to go through. When you take that thing and turn it upside down, and you loosen those roots just a little bit, and you've dug your hole twice as wide and as deep, you've taken your native soil out, put it in a wheelbarrow or into a small pile, you've gone and you've taken some planting mix out of a bag or out of a compost pile that you've purchased. You do this 50-50 mix. You take a pinch or two of some organic fertilizer and you mix that in with it, and then you replant that plant in that environment. You have taken the possibility of transplant shock down from 100% down to less than 10. Then you take and you water it in and you monitor it for the first 30 days. You give it the type of water that it needs and wants. If you're planting a gallon can emerald carpet manzanita, you're not going to be watering it every day. But if you have 100 degrees outside and you got yourself a lace cap hydrangea, it's probably going to need to be looked at and probably watered each day for a while. So you have to know the plant you're putting in the ground, you have to amend the soil to give it that transitional space, and then you have to be able to know what is the needs of that plant that you paid so much money for to begin with. So you can see how soil amending is like, it's like taking out an insurance policy for plant success. That's basically the easiest way I can put it. Here's another analogy for you. Now, some of you may be parents when you're listening, some of you may not, but imagine this. A brand new baby infant comes into the world, right? And all the stresses it has to go through from where it's been so happy for 9-ish months or so, and now it's out in this world. Transitional shock, upsetness, etc. Now, that particular little baby infant is going to require a certain type of care to transition it from where he or she came from over to life and how it's going to be in the world. It's going to require a certain amount of food, and it's going to require probably a liquid diet. So pretty much a liquid diet for a few months, and then a slow transition of liquid and soft solid foods, etc. It probably is not going to work very well if you take little Junior or baby Janie home and you slap them a 16-ounce ribeye with a baked potato and all the fixins, a side salad, and a glass of Merlot. It's not going to work very well. Well, that analogy also applies to that $235 beautiful tree you just bought. You got to remember where it has been and what it has been raised in, and now where is it going, and how can you transition that to over here successfully without transplant shock, failure, and death. There's nothing worse than spending hundreds of dollars on all these plants and only getting half of them to thrive. It really is. It's disappointing. It makes people give up, say, screw this. Or here's another thing, is they will always be blamers. Blamers that say, you know, I went to that nursery coach runs, I bought $500 worth of plants last Saturday and planted them in the ground, and here we are a month later and 90% of them are dead. Those plants Coach sells die. They are not good plants. I call BS. I really do. And it's the other reason that when I was in the retail nursery, both my staff and when I was staff, we always impressed upon the customer the need for amendments, fertilizers, etc. It was an upsell. I get it. That's part of our job. But it was also to ensure success for that customer, so when they did do the work, they got the reward and not the failure. Make sure that you follow along with that 50-50 rule. 50% native soil, 50% soil amendment, a pinch or two of the right amount of organic fertilizer, mixing it all together and packing it down, giving yourself a water basin. Make sure that root ball is sitting up an inch or so when it does settle out, it settles to ground level and not below. And then all of a sudden, I used to have customers come back and go, oh, that lace cap hydrangea you sold me last spring, it doubled in size and it's so beautiful, and now we're back to get more stuff. That's what happens when customers listen to the professionals and they don't think like they're being taken advantage of. Okay, so we know the why now. We've driven that home with a hammer and a spike, right? Okay, let's talk about some of the sources. Sources are just as important, and when I say sources, sources for your amendments are just as important as the type of amendment itself. Now, from the commercial side, from the contractor side, 95% of everything I did came in bulk. And I bought cubic yards of compost when I did stuff. And it was important that I did that because number one, I used a lot of it. And number two, it was more cost effective in bulk. But when I did buy the bulk materials, I was very, very picky about where I got them. Only 2 places in the county that I worked in did I actually trust the mixes that came in. On occasion, when I was a newer contractor, I bought it kind of close to wherever I was working. And there have been compost mixes that have had hypodermic needles in them, which when I bagged those things up and took them back to the retailer, they were gobsmacked and they apologized and they said they were going to look into their source, blah, 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 blah. But meanwhile, can you imagine if, a needle poke? So if you want to be 100% safe, go with the sterilized bag mixes that are sold in retail outlets. But if you're doing large projects, lots and lots of planting, lots of seed lawn or sod lawn installations, that's going to cost a lot of money to do that much bulk materials. So your soil amending is a step in a larger process. You've done your research, you've made your selections, you went and purchased your stuff. It is now on site along with all your soil amendment. Maybe you have just yourself, maybe you have some help on that day of planting, and it becomes an assembly line. If you want something to really, really work and you're planting maybe 30 or 40 type of plants, you're re-landscaping the whole backyard, it is going to be, and I'll tell you how I used to do it as a contractor, is I had a crew of guys, maybe 2 or 3 on planting day. And I was planting sometimes hundreds of plants, from 15-gallon trees or 24-inch box trees to 5-gallon shrubs to gallon can shrubs to 4-inch perennials. Who knows what I was doing? But in order to be efficient and to save the back and save the body and save the morale, I used to put 2 diggers out in front of me, and I would have the plants placed there the night before. And we would come along and mark them with the bucket, just do a little shimmy back and forth, move it aside. Then I would have them dig the hole with my instruction. And if the holes weren't done correctly, they had to come back and do them over again. What you want is you want the hole straight up and down on the sides, flat on the bottom as possible, about 1.5 to 2 times the width of the root ball, and about as deep as the root ball. That was specific for me. That was something I did not tolerate anything less than. So when they got that, they would put the container in the hole, verify depth, and move on. I was the one that did all the actual planting. Why, you ask? Is because I had to guarantee my plants. I was one of the few contractors that did. I guaranteed the plants for a 45-day period after the job was complete. And I did that with a lot of instruction to the client, and they had to follow that instruction so that the warranty was guaranteed. So I put the plants in the hole. I did the firming, I did the basins. Then my last guy would come along and he'd be the waterer and the cleanup. And that was how we did it. And usually planting days, 1-day event, maybe a 2-day event on bigger jobs, and we were done. I would go back in after everything was done and I would inspect, especially after the watering, making sure that nothing really settled in the hole, making sure that it was all, the rings were just right, etc. Now, that did not include the drip irrigation going in just yet. That came afterwards. But you can see how it was just literally like old Henry Ford's initial assembly line at Ford factories, something brand new. And you can bring that to your landscape project if you're doing multiple plants. It really is. It makes it fun, it makes it fast, and it makes it a very easy way to get from start to finish in a rapid fashion. But you notice that everything that is done, everything still gets that 50-50 approach. 50 native soil, 50 soil amendment, a pinch of organic fertilizers into the hole it goes, back in with the 50-50 mix, firm it up really good on the sides, and then a water basin around it. Make sure that root ball is sitting up an inch. You know, in all the years that I did contract and I did put in, I only lost, by warranty, one 15-gallon tree. One 15-gallon tree. I do not know why it died, but I did replace it for the customer. And I think out of the tens of thousands that I did plant, and I did impress upon the customer the importance of vigilance in that warranty period, I thought that was a pretty good rate. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there, trolls, you know who you are probably gonna go, yeah, right, whatever, sure. Hey, I have no reason to lie about it. I'm proud of the fact that I found a system and it worked very well. You can take that system that I have used and replicate it for yourself, and I hope you have the same success rate as I did. I really do. It's certainly not brain surgery whatsoever. It's just a repetition of a system that works. And if you understand that and you embrace the simplicity of it, chances are you're going to be fine. If you want another little tidbit about soil amending, especially if you're planting in the warmer months or when your soils are dry, when you place your plants the night before or even 2 days before, make sure you water them well in that place. As it drains out of the container, it will soak that spot you're going to be planting it in and make the digging much easier. I just give this stuff away, don't I? Yeah, I do. I also used a lot of this approach when it came to lawn installation. Now, where I practiced in Northern California, I did not do seed lawns. Seed lawns for a contractor are kind of a recipe for disaster. Because if you're taking out old lawn and you're putting in new lawn and you're preparing a sod bed and you have dormant weed seed that you put in there and put down your seed and then your top dressing and you've amended the soil 4 inches deep or so, it will germinate. And everything you don't want in there will germinate. And now you have a situation where you have a lot of dormant weed seed that is coming in. And for a contractor, you don't want to waste your time and money coming back to treat the weeds that are coming up in the new customer's yard. That's why I always went with sod. Sod just smothers weed seeds very well. The only thing it did not do is if folks did not get all the Bermuda grass or something else out when they're renovating, Bermuda grass will regenerate. And for those people who think that you can just cardboard it, solarize it with black plastic or whatever, good luck. I invite you to keep on doing you, and I'm going to keep on doing me, but it'll kill the top growth, but chances are the rhizomic roots underneath will be not affected. And you give that thing air and light again, you're going to see a regeneration. I have seen it in unsuccessful customers' yards, period. So, is this a bigger check that you have to write for all this amendment and everything else, this fertilizers, the time and effort it's going to take for that 30-day period to transition from nursery to success in your yard? Absolutely it's going to. It's going to add to the bottom line. But what's more expensive? Is it more expensive to do that or to rip dead plants out of the ground, go back to the nursery, keep buying and buying and buying, and you know what they say, repeating the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is just insanity. So maybe take a few tips from this old landscaper, try the system and see how it does for you. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. Outside of the soil amending, one of the best things you can do is make sure that your plant selection is carefully done. And when I say plant selection is find it when it's fresh in the store, buy it and get it in the ground when it's fresh, and don't buy clearance items unless you know full well why they're on clearance. Most of the time, retail nurseries will not want to have plant material sitting on their shelves more than 60 days. At the end of the season, they're going to discount them tremendously, but they're discounting them because they need to get rid of them, yes, but also the health of the plant in a container is going to dwindle over time. The root ball gets very, very root bound, and those type of plants are hard to correct the nature of how it's growing. You really have to go about a certain way to get success out of those long-term sitting plants, and that's a whole nother video. Anyway, make sure you find the fresh stuff. That's the best way possible. You can gently take their plants, turn them upside down, loosen that root ball and look at it. Make sure it's just not a spiral of roots. You want to see roots, but you don't want to have them so bound that you're going, oh my God, this thing's been here forever. So make sure you find fresh stock. So let's sum it up. 50-50 mix, pinches of organic fertilizer, a hole that is as deep as the root ball and twice as wide. We're doing it as an insurance policy for that transitional space going from containerized stock to ground planting and a successful transition from a container stock to a landscape beauty in a year or so. Guys, that's what I have for you this week. I hope you picked up a little something there. It may be a little common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people just don't have it in this day and age. Make sure that you follow that super simplistic recipe for landscape success when you're putting things in the ground. If you have any other questions, you can fire them away. They're generally right about here. youryardcoach@gmail.com. I'll be glad to answer all the questions that come in. Thank you for the purchase of the 15-step checklist this week. I very much appreciate you. And the Amazon store is always open. Don't forget the website, youryardcoach.com. Hey, until next Friday, I appreciate your time. And if you stuck around this long, which I do very much appreciate, make sure you subscribe and give me a like. Sure does send out the thing to a lot more people to look at. Anyway, thanks again. See you next week. Bye for now.